Hi, I'm W.Lang, Senior Editor of Popular Woodworking Magazine, and welcome to Shop Class on Demand. In this session, we're going to learn about SketchUp. We've been using SketchUp at Popular Woodworking Magazine for a few years now, and it's really been a fantastic tool for us. We use it to plan projects before we build them. We also use it as a basis for illustrations that you see in print in the magazine. It effectively lets us build things twice. We build it in the model. We can visualize how things go together. We can see it in 3 dimensions. We can come in close to get details. We can check the sizes of parts. We can do all of this before we ever cut any wood. It's fast, it's efficient. It's made us better woodworkers. It's a tremendous visualization tool, and it's also a wealth of information. In this cabinet, I know the size of every piece and every part and how all the parts fit together. I can also use the information in the completed model and generate a number of different views. Now, all of these different views are fast to make because I'm not drawing anything over. I'm simply pulling parts from the completed model. This exploded view, for example, was made by copying the model and then moving the parts around to get this exploded view. I can also take a close look at details and share these. I can see from the front and the back, and again, this doesn't take much time. I'm just taking snapshots of different parts of the model and different points of view. When it comes time to head to the shop, I can generate and print out detailed drawings with dimensions such as this showing the door assembly. Because I have all of the parts saved in the file, I can also pull parts into another sheet, print that out, and I have a cut list showing all the parts, all the dimensions, where the joints are, what size they are. It's a tremendous tool to help build efficiently and to build accurately. Another great use we've found is to make full-size templates. This is a close look at the top of the cabinet. If I print this at full size, I can get the shape of the side, I can get the through mortise, I've got the locations, I also have the sizes of them. I can print this at full size, take it out to the shop, glue it down to a piece of wood, and make a template to make these parts accurately. All in all, SketchUp has made us better woodworkers, and we think every woodworker can benefit from learning how to use this program. That's the good news about SketchUp. The bad news is it takes a little while to learn, and you have to practice it. SketchUp is a fairly intuitive program, but there are some quirks to it, and sometimes the obvious ways to do things aren't the most efficient ways. What we're going to do in this series of videos is share with you the things that we've learned so that you can model efficiently and accurately. One of the first hurdles to overcome when you're learning SketchUp is you need to learn 2 distinct sets of skills. You need to learn how to draw, but you also need to learn to navigate around your drawing. And it's difficult to learn how to zoom and pan and orbit while you're learning to draw. Now, a lot of people get slowed down by this. They become reluctant to zoom because they're trying to model at the same time. So one of the things I've found is you're better off to get an existing model, spend some time navigating around that before you begin to learn how to draw. Now, there are several sources online for models. You can go to sketchup.google.com, and you can also go to popularwoodworking.com/SketchUp. You can even access models within the SketchUp program. If you go up to the File menu, click on 3D Warehouse, and get Models, you'll be connected to this online resource. In the search box, you just type in a term. I'm looking for a hay rake table that we featured in Popular Woodworking Magazine a few years ago. The search comes up, and I'm presented with a model. I can take a preview of it in 3 dimensions, and I can download it by clicking the tab that says Download Model. It'll ask me if I want to load it directly into the SketchUp model, and when I click Yes, that window closes and the model from the 3D warehouse appears. Now I've got something to look at. I can practice the navigation skills in SketchUp. One of the curious things about SketchUp is that the obvious ways of doing things aren't always the best way. The navigation tools are up here on the toolbar. There's Orbit, Pan, and Zoom. And it seems like that would be the simple way to access them, but there's a better way. If you have a 3-button scroll wheel mouse, the scroll wheel contains all of the navigation functions for SketchUp. If you roll the wheel up, it zooms in. If you roll it back, it zooms out. If you press down the scroll wheel and move the mouse around, then you orbit. You can see things from underneath or at any angle. And if you hold down the Shift key while you're orbiting, that invokes the Pan command. And that lets you move back and forth. The navigation tools are also under the camera menu. And this is a slow way to get there, though. You really need to work on the skills to use the mouse functions to be efficient. There are also keyboard shortcuts for the navigation commands. O for orbit, H for pan, and Z for zoom. Now, one of the things while you're in a navigation command, if you right click, a menu pops up and the other commands become available. The other thing about the navigation commands is they're transparent. You can use them in the middle of moving something or drawing something. This is an important feature because often you need to come in very close to click on a specific point and then back out to see more of the model. One of the other features on the toolbar is Zoom Extents. If you're in close, you can get lost in the model sometimes. Zoom Extents backs up your point of view to see the entire model. Another feature is the standard views. These are familiar if you're used to 2-dimensional drawings. This is a plan view and a front elevation and a side elevation. You also have an isometric view available. So I suggest you get a model, spend a half hour or so working your way around it. Look at it from different sides, zoom in to take a look at details, zoom back out, and pan around. When you're comfortable with how to get around a model, then you can start learning how to draw. To model efficiently in SketchUp, you need a thorough understanding of the basic controls, how things are made, and also how the program works. Let's start by understanding what we're seeing on screen and what the SketchUp world is really like. This darker area is a flat horizontal surface. It's called the ground plane. These 3 colored lines are called axes. The blue axis is a vertical direction. The green and red axes are horizontal directions. Directions in SketchUp are referred to by colors because as you spin around, you can change, and what was right and left now becomes front and back. The basic tool for drawing is called the line tool. It's represented by a pencil. You can pick it from the toolbar. It's also under the Tools menu, and there's a keyboard shortcut, the letter L. You click on a point to start a line, go out a certain distance, and click again to stop it. One of the things you may notice is the line is a red color, and a little tag appears that says from point or on red axis. And those are aids in the program that help me keep in the right direction. The reason that this is important is everything in SketchUp is in perspective because it's in 3 dimensions. This rectangle really has square corners, but because I'm looking at it in perspective, it doesn't appear that way. If you have a lot of experience drawing on a drafting board or in a 2-dimensional CAD program, this can get confusing when you work in SketchUp because your hand and eye coordination is probably trained to draw what looks square to you on the screen. If you see a black line, that means you're not parallel to the axis and you're somewhere out in space. And it can be very confusing, and you'll make very odd shaped things that don't match what you want to make. So as you draw, take your time, let these tips appear. Watch for the colors to see that you're on axis. Pretty soon your hand and eye coordination will adapt, and you'll get used to looking to the colors without thinking about them. The other aid, and you can see these appearing, are called snap inferences. When I approach the end of a line or the middle of a line, a little dot appears, and that lets me know I'm going to be drawing exactly from that point. As I move along, a little tag appears letting me know I'm on axis. When I get above another point, it shows me that I'm matching up to it. That lets me draw a nice square straight line. Another important feature of the program is called the measurements window. That's down in the lower right hand corner of the screen. As I draw a line, to control the length, you'll notice that numbers change as the line gets longer. Now what I don't want to do is try to jiggle the mouse and hit a certain number. After I start drawing, I simply type in a measurement and hit the enter key. As I start to draw, start the line, just type, I don't have to click in the window or anything, and hit enter, and that makes the line the correct length. This is important because other features such as moving depend on an accurate number in the measurements window. One of the good features of SketchUp when you're beginning is the instructor window. From the Windows menu, I click and open the instructor window. The instructor window describes and tells about the operation of each tool you select. As you change the tool selection, the instructions change also. This gives you basic information about how each tool functions. The select tool is important because for a lot of operations such as moving an object, it's better to select it first. To get a single object, you just click on it and it turns blue. If you click another object, it deselects the first one. To select more than one object, you hold down the Shift key. You'll see a little plus and minus sign appear by the cursor, and that lets you add to the group. When you have the whole group, then you can move them in one shot. You can also select objects by drawing a box around them. Now there are 2 distinct ways that this function works. If I draw a box from left to right, everything that's entirely in the box is selected. This is called a bounding box. As you can see here, I don't have the entire square, only these 2 lines are selected. This helps later on to select certain points. Now if I come the other way, from right to left, here with a crossing box, it selects anything that touches the extents of that box to select it. Looking back at the instructor window, if I click on the title bar for it, it collapses and doesn't take up space. If I click the red X, that closes it, and I'll need to return to the window menu to display it again. I recommend keeping it handy as you learn, and when you get to different commands, you can open the window up and explore what the function of that is. Now within SketchUp, no matter how complex an object is, it can only be one of two things. It can either be an edge, which we also will call a line, or it can be a face. Edges or lines, and they have a length, but they don't have any thickness. When you enclose an area with lines, it forms a face. The face is the area in between. Now the face depends on the lines to exist. If I take one of the lines away, the face ceases to exist. If I redraw the line, it comes back. Now that I've drawn some things, I need to know how to remove things as well. There are two separate ways. Again, the obvious way, it looks like the eraser tool would be the thing to use. The eraser tool, however, is a little difficult to use. There's a tiny pick box on the end of it, and an object needs to be within that little box to be erased. The other oddity of the erase tool is that it only works on edges. It doesn't work on faces. So to remove a face, I use the alternate method for deleting an object, and that's the select tool. Select it with the select arrow and hit the delete key. Often this is quicker and easier than using the eraser. When you first install SketchUp, you only have a minimal amount of tools available, and the program is set up for architecture rather than for woodworking. So we need to take a few minutes and get things set the way we want them so that we can operate efficiently. The first thing we want to do is to set some preferences. So we go to the Window menu and check Preferences. Now on a Mac, this procedure is a little bit different. You'll find it under the SketchUp menu. The first thing to look at in the list is Drawing. Here we have a click style, which controls the way lines are drawn. You may have a preference if you've used another graphics program. For now, I would leave it at Auto Detect and check Continue Line Drawing. More importantly, make sure that you have Display Crosshairs checked. This puts a colored indicator for the axis direction on your mouse cursor as you draw, and this is a tremendous help for keeping on track. The next thing to look at is OpenGL. If you have an older computer and you're having some problems with your video display, checking and unchecking these boxes can help with that. The last thing to look at is the template. Now the templates are sets of dimensions and the way the background displays for different applications. Most of these are for architecture or Google Earth or engineering. We want to scroll way down the menu, find Product Design and Woodworking, and Units and Inches. Click OK. That saves the system preferences for us. Next we'll look at Window and Model Info. In here we want to look at the Dimensions window. Later on when we get to Dimensions, this is where we can pick a font, a style for the arrow, and how to align dimensions. Down at the bottom is Units, and we want to set this for fractional. Architectural is feet and inches, decimal is in hundreds. Generally in woodworking we want to stay with fractions. I set the precision to a 64th. I uncheck Enable Link Snapping. When we get to working with angles, we may need to change these settings, but for now 0.0 is okay. And then we can close the Model Info window. Of course, as woodworkers, we need as many tools as we can possibly get. So up at the View menu, under Toolbars, here's a large tool set. This includes more tools than we have available when we first start out. We also want to select the Camera toolbar, This includes some zoom features and functions. The Views toolbar. These are the little houses that'll give us standard views. Now on a Mac, this setup is a little bit different. You want to look for Customize toolbar, and that will give you the option to drag groups of icons to your toolbar and set them up the way you want them. The other feature of SketchUp are windows and palettes that we can open and use as we work with the program. First of these is Entity Info. Then we want to select Components, Styles, Scenes, and Layers. Now we won't use these right away, but it's nice to have them available. With these windows, if you click on the name tag, they collapse. And you can move them around the screen. They'll also stick to each other. So I put them together as a group. Leave them in the upper right hand corner of the screen. To use one, you click on the name, it opens up. You can explore the options, work with what's in there, and then tuck it back out of the way. The most important window at this point in learning the program is the instructor window. We mentioned this before, but it's nice to leave available. It will tell you with each tool, as you select the tool, how it works, as well as available options for using the tool. The blue titles down here take you to online help if you're connected to the internet. Now that we have the program set up, let's look at some of the tools we'll be using most often as we make models. We already looked at the pencil tool. We know how to make a line, control its length, and keep it on axis. This is an effective way to model, but it takes some time. A more efficient way is the rectangle tool. The rectangle tool does what the pencil tool does, but it does it much faster. With just 2 clicks of the mouse, I've drawn what would take several clicks with the pencil tool. Now when I make a rectangle, I want to watch for the same things I did when using the pencil. I click on a start point. I want to keep my axis references together. I also want to be able to control the measurements. I can do this down in the dimensions window, but because I have both width and length, I need to type 2 numbers. So I type the first number, then a comma, then the second. And that gives me a rectangle the size I want. The same direction inferences and snap inferences also apply with rectangles that they did with the pencils. But I'm drawing much faster because I'm drawing several lines in a face at one time. Now this basic box shape is the key to making things in SketchUp. It looks like a piece of wood, and we can do it with the rectangle tool or with the pencil. But just as the rectangle is more efficient than the pencil, there's another way to make a box that is even more efficient. This is a tool called push-pull. I get push-pull, I put it over a face on the model, and then click and drag the mouse. This makes a flat rectangle into what looks like a solid object. I can also use push-pull to change the size of something once I've drawn it. I can stretch it in length, I can shorten it, I can make it taller, I can make it longer. push-pull will only go in the direction that's 90 degrees to the face I select. Again, there are inferences for snaps and directions that are within the program that will help out. For example, I want to make this rectangle into a box the same height as this one. When I take push-pull, it's locked into going vertically, so I can come over to the other rectangle, and when I see the references appear, I know they're going to be the same height. I can also control the distance of an extrusion by typing a number in the measurements window. Once I start, I head in the direction I want, hit the number, hit the enter key, and it makes it the desired length. Now, one of the early problems we need to resolve is everything that we've drawn is still a face or a line. This isn't a solid piece of wood, it's a collection of lines and faces. So if I want to work with something, if I want to move part of it, it stretches what it's connected to. Everything in SketchUp, when it's an individual object, is sticky. This edge is attached to these faces, so if I move the edge, the faces stretch with it. Sometimes this can be handy, but most of the time it's not what we want to do. It particularly gets to be a problem if I want to put one piece on top of another one. I can select it and move it. When I go to move it again, it's stuck to the piece below it, and it stretches it out when I try to move it. The way to overcome this is by combining objects. After I have a group of objects selected, if I right-click, this menu pops up, and Make a Group is one of the options. Make Group combines the objects. When I click on it now, instead of just selecting a single face or an edge, it selects the entire object. This makes it easier for the program to think of things. It's thinking of one block, much the way that we would think of one piece of wood, instead of a collection of individual lines and faces. The other feature of groups is they don't stick to anything except each other. So now I can move things independently, which brings us to the functions of the Move tool. Moving is very important and it's used very often. This is the icon on the toolbar. You can also start it by typing the letter M on the keyboard. When you have the Move tool active, if you click on an object, it'll move. It'll go along the axis dimensions, and the points within it also will snap. One caution with Move is these little red crosses. If you click directly on one, Move becomes Rotate, and things will spin around, which probably isn't what you want to do at this point. There are also two ways to start the Move tool. The first is to type the shortcut or select the tool from the toolbar, and then select an object. The other method is to take the select arrow, select the object first, and then click the Move tool. Selecting first gives you more control. If, for example, I want to move this line and I select the Move tool first, it may select the other one. I don't have good control over it. But by selecting first, now when I start the Move tool, it's only going to move the line that I selected. When we're in the shop, it's a good idea to check measurements as we work, and it's also a good idea in SketchUp. This tool is called the tape measure, and it does just what its name implies. I can click on a point, move the cursor to another point, and it'll tell me what the dimension is. This number also appears down in the measurements window. I don't have to click again to get a number to display. If I just hover the cursor over a point, it will tell me. However, if I do hit enter, the number will appear down in the measurements window for me.